Hello, friends. Welcome to the 22nd episode of the Reframe podcast. Our guest today is known by his alias Emkwan, and he's one of the Middle East top tech YouTubers and content creators. He focuses his channel and social media around unboxing, reviews, and commenting on the latest from the world of technology and lifestyle. And he has over 25 million video views and over 100,000 subscribers. Emkwan's content has been featured online and offline, including Esquire magazine, Forbes, and other publications. And he's regularly working with some of the top international brands in Middle East, including Apple, Huawei, Mercedes, Rolex, and many others. In today's episode with Emkwan, we're going to talk about his journey, his learnings, and how he likes to motivate the newcomers in the ever-competing world of online content creation. If you get value out of the show, please help us spread the message by sharing it in your network, and we'd also love a review on iTunes or any other platform where you're listening to this. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell so you are aware of the new episodes as they come out. Let's get into the 22nd episode of the Reframe podcast with Emkwan. With a given scenario now that you are, we are working from home, you're spending a lot of time working from home. How's that impacted your productivity at work?
It's been interesting. I think work has managed to get more out of me in terms of productivity. So, that's been one side of this whole scenario situation. I think the other thing is like, if you do a 9 to 5 and you do something on the side, let's say, if you're creating content, whatever, you'll know that having a normal schedule, particularly when you're married, you have kids, other responsibilities, let's say other business interests, and so on and so forth, you have to be very, very time, on top of time management. There's no two ways about
Mm,
it.
mm,
So having a normal schedule helps with that. The moment
mm,
things go topsy turvy in the situation that we're in, it makes it a bit more challenging. And
mm,
this whole working from home scenario, the home working from home situation, uh, looks from the outside as a bit of a luxury, but it depends on which industry you're in, which
mm,
background you work in. But typically here in the Middle East, here in the UAE, it just gives employers a chance to sort of expect more
mm,
because you're at home and you're kind of plugged in. That kind of view on on working
mm.
from home, which might be different from the West or in other places. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a bit more of a challenge. Yeah,
I think that's because of the attitude in West. Most of the time, we keep on hearing a lot of companies have been following partial work from home as it is, before this whole
yeah,
pandemic situation. But here we have seen a lot of companies who were forced to go digital, forced to work from home
yeah.
practically overnight. I think that
Literally overnight. So
that's why
there's a
we
lot
have
of
to. Yeah, it's a learning curve.
exactly. I think if you think about it, even in the West, there are a lot of policies that are tried and tested that are already in place, which we wouldn't have here per se in this scenario. But I
Hmm.
hope. Sometimes it requires a push. I mean, if you look at e-commerce here, if you look at other stuff,
Hmm.
everything's been forced to kind
Yeah.
of get up to speed. So I hope, in the long term, this is a positive thing. Hopefully, employers can look back at some of these experiences, put
Hmm.
together better policies. There'll be a drive towards making it more sustainable. Inshallah, I hope. Yeah,
Yeah, this whole scenario is interesting because not only e-commerce, not only retail, but practically every kind of operation is now moving towards being online, being
yeah,
remotely possible. So now I think in the
exactly,
changing landscape, companies don't need to hire staff in a particular boundary or geographical territory. You can hire your staff anywhere in the world,
exactly.
and organizations have realized, those organizations which would never imagine being remotely possible to work, banks for example, they were always
Yeah,
relying on face to face interactions, but now they're all going digital, which means, and their operations are going digital, which mean that again their operations team can be in any part of the world. I think that's brilliant, I would say.
yeah,
It's a completely
exactly.
new territory.
It's bringing it up to speed with what we would expect for
Yeah.
being in the year 2020.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But you think it's going to come back to the way it was once we are, inshallah, you know, we're done with this pandemic, we're back to our normal lives, or is this going to be the new normal?
I don't know. I'm not sure that this is going to be the new normal. I think there'll be elements of this which might be the new normal. I think this
Hmm.
whole remote working element might not necessarily be rolled out across the board, but there
Hmm.
might be facets of it that we'll see incorporated, included in
Hmm.
just the way that we work. Um, I think certain perhaps the way or certain things that we took for granted in terms of just how things would operate in terms of a public
Hmm.
environment, let's say malls, shopping, the whole range of buffets, for example, which are a big deal here. Maybe it'll take a bit of time before those go back to some kind of level of normal. If they go back to normal, it might just turn out that we might lose
Hmm.
buffets, for example, or buffets might take a new shape or change, coming to your table. What
Right.
would you like, sir? Let me get it on a plate, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that this is the new normal, but I think it might be, there might be elements of what we're experiencing now that
Hmm.
merge into a new normal. Yeah.
Right. And on your side hustle that you do with your content creation and your YouTube channel and your reviews and tech element, the tech part of Emkwan,
Yeah.
that has always been, of course, working from home. So now both of the
Yeah.
things
That's
are
always
sharing the
been,
same time slots, sharing the same kind of environment. So do they clash with each other?
they don't clash so much because I mean, I still have very clear sort of lines as to, I mean, when I'm working, I'm normally on call, so it's a situation where, you've got to be sort of plugged in, you've got to be tuned in for that
Yeah.
sort of time. So when the time stops, then it's, it might be time for me to begin the whole MQuan related stuff.
Hmm.
In the past, I experimented with getting a remote sort of office, and there's one
Okay.
here in Abu Dhabi. On occasions, I've been down there. Sometimes when I need to do voiceovers, filming, so on and so forth. It's a really good resource here, 2454. But things have changed. Sometimes it's just easier instead of driving down. It's like a
Hmm.
20-30 minute drive. It's just easier, just kind of like just waiting
Yeah.
or perhaps moving it around, sending the family out, for example, than it
Hmm.
is to do that. I think the biggest part of content creation and something that people might want to consider when they're doing content creation is that it's gone. I mean, it's never been about a polished end product, especially on social media, because I think if people view a polished end product, it
Hmm.
normally has an element that shows that it's not uh, natural. It's kind of
Right.
it's planned. It's kind of like rehearsed.
Hmm.
Some of those words come to mind, but when you are going with the flow, when it's slightly unpolished, it actually, in my experience, works better on social media, works better at engaging
Hmm.
and connecting with people. This is one of the reasons why, I mean, the people who aren't familiar with my YouTube channel, I do tech reviews, I do unboxings. And one of the criticisms that has been levied to me in the past and still does to some point now is that Emkwan, your videos look, they need to be more polished. People say, how come like the camera shakes or this or that? And I think
Right.
a big part of that is because in my mindset, I would only watch back YouTube videos or tech related videos that were slightly unpolished because it gave me a level of like, oh yeah, this is actually someone, this is like, this is a normal person, you know.
Right.
When I see very, very polished videos, especially on social media, it's almost like
Hmm.
in my mind, a click goes off and it says, is this really normal? Um, so I think that's an important part of a narrative. That's something that I've certainly found. So given in this situation, where we're all busy with time, time is one of those
Hmm.
things. It's just like it's crazy how time strapped we all are. Sometimes it's just easier to
Hmm.
flip the switch and just do it, regardless of where you are. I think I'm a big, big believer of that. Even my current setup, I'm just looking at my table right now. I mean, I've got like not DSLR. This is a mirrorless sort of camera that I've recently purchased to improve the quality of the videos. But
Hmm.
being totally honest, even this feels like it's a hassle sometimes. Sometimes it's actually just easier to
It
go with
is.
this, you know.
It is.
Um,
And to
and
be honest, I mean, the
yeah,
cameras on the phones are getting really, really good now. And as long as a
yeah,
daily kind of a content creation and a casual content creator or somebody more natural, like you said, it goes. I think the phone actually presents that picture because
exactly.
the camera would actually present the picture as being more professional and polished, right? So you tend to get into those that process then
Yeah,
when you're filming with a so-called pro camera kind of thing.
exactly. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I mean this is one of the things. Even when I started off, when I started off experimenting on social media, I think blogging was still quite big then, and people used to say to me,
Mm.
"Emkwan, why don't you blog? This is really important, especially in this part of the world." I mean, if you think about maybe even 4 years ago here, um, blogging was still kind of like, like people would say to me, "Hey, I'm Kwan, we want to do a tech review on YouTube, yalla yalla, but do you have a blog? We also want something written." I was like, "No, I don't
Mm.
blog. That's not what I do. I do a lot of writing during the day. The last thing I want to do is write." And
But
the
interesting. I'm
thing that
I'm
I
I'm
learned
still a believer of so I because
of
I started
blogs,
as a blogger, text blogger, but I other than that also I think I'm more of a believer in the writing, content writing, the
I
actual
I I,
articles
I
and
agree.
posts somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think look, I think blogging has its place, just like
Yeah,
audio, for example. I mean, like podcasts. The vast majority of people don't listen to podcasts. Like if we take the world demographic, most people just want to watch
true.
video clips and even YouTube video. I mean, like,
Mm.
now TikTok is, I'm finding, replacing YouTube
Yeah,
videos because
yeah,
people don't have the mindset to sit for 7 minutes to
and the
watch
attention
a
spans.
review and the attention span. So everything has its place. I mean, blogging just at that time was the dominant kind of platform, essentially.
Mm.
Um, and I chose not to do that because I didn't have the time element of it. So I was like, look,
Mm.
let me stick with video. And I'm glad I did that because, as we've seen over time, video
Mm.
has become one of that medium which is just more just approachable, more manageable, and it's what people
Mm.
have gravitated towards. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's all about saving time. It's all about doing things in a time efficient way. I think the most important thing, particularly for social media, is to get the narrative out there, to get the message out there,
Right.
regardless of if you're a tech reviewer or if you're running a humanitarian sort of project and you want sort of leverage and
Mm.
traction on that front, or if you're a new startup business. It's all about leveraging in this day and age what you have available in real time to cut out as much as possible um, the gap or the space between the message that you have and how you need to deliver that message.
Mhm.
So, I mean, over polished videos, over polished kind of Insta posts, I mean, they look great, but if that means that it's gonna take you the same amount of time to do one in that polished format as, let's say, 5 or 6 Insta stories and 2 just quick posts, which one
Mm.
would you go for? It's better to do the quantity as opposed to the quality, even though that sometimes doesn't make sense. In most of the situation that we're in nowadays, everyone talks about quality, quality, quality. But on social media, with the algorithms, with just the amount of
Yeah.
content that's out there, the narrative, there is a big emphasis on quantity as well. That's
Yeah.
why, I mean, let's say Instagram, for example, if you're not posting up a certain amount a day, your account doesn't get sort of viewed
Yeah. True.
uh, on Facebook as well. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I preach this part about doing is better than perfect, and that is exactly
yeah,
what it means. Quantity over quality. But this has been sort of drilled into people's mind and expectations because of content creators, for example, in your area, with people like MKBHD and Unbox Therapy, and
mm,
they have a whole production house behind them practically. They have a
yeah.
huge team and crew. They spend hours and hours in filming a single scene, single shot. And I think slowly and gradually people are expecting that out of everybody. So
I
let's
think
segue
that's right.
into
Yeah,
new people coming into into social media, essentially, not essentially
Yeah.
into tech reviewers or any kind of we don't want to specifically discuss any area, but people coming onto social media now, because as we
Mm.
look at the younger generation, they have grown with this. They were born with the social media inside them practically. It's
Yeah.
very easy for them to be comfortable in front of camera and speak out their mind easily in front of cameras. But they, at the same time, I've seen they get also distracted by this fact, because one part that everybody thinks from the get go is that, oh, I'm in the tech reviewer business. So my natural competition is with MKBHD,
Yeah.
you know? So instead of going step by step, they would look at the absolute, top uh, YouTuber, for example, in their category and then try to compete with them. And that's not possible. You've got to go step by step. So let's talk about new people coming into social media. Now, you've been doing it for quite some time. You've gone through different phases. You've experimented. You've learned from those experiments. I saw that you're not focusing as much on your personal vlog channel as much as you're doing on your reviewing channel. So
Yeah.
again, I think that was also a phase where you learned some lessons out of it. If you were to give an advice to your younger self who was just entering into this business, and
Yeah.
then give him those advice based on what you've learned, what would that be?
I think the advice that I would give to my younger self is also the advice that I give to myself now when I lose focus and traction. And that is that you have to remember, you have to create the content that you yourself would watch.
Hmm.
It has to be of value in some shape, way, or form, whether that's entertainment, you just want to make yourself laugh on TikTok, let's say,
Mm.
or whether that's to, you know, talk about a product, a said product, um, or whether that's to, talk about just yourself. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think what's important is approaching it from the mindset that would you be happy and comfortable watching this back?
Mm.
Like, would you be into it? Would you be able to watch, let's say, if you make a 7 to 10 minute video on YouTube, would you be able to start at the
Right.
beginning and go all the way through to the end? Because if you can do that, that's an indication that you're on a winning kind of formula. I
Mm.
think it is all about, if you look at the MKBHDs, if you look at the unbox therapies, if you look at just, I mean, that's just on YouTube and tech. If you look at
Yeah.
TikTok and you look at, what's her name, Charlie there on TikTok, and you look at some of the Instagram influencers and content creators, a lot of those people are content creators that are adding some kind of value. Sometimes we, as in me and you, might not get that at all. It
Right.
might be over our heads. But in whatever niche, in whatever platform you're on, um, it's got to be slightly different. But
Hmm.
ultimately, the message is about adding value. Really simply put, it's about adding value. And adding value doesn't have to be with a, you know, 7,000 dirham camera or
Mm.
a total setup of, let's say, 15, 20,000 dirhams. It doesn't have to be that.
Right.
Sometimes it is in the content, either the
Mm.
message you're putting out, either the style that you're putting it out in,
Yeah.
either the fact that, for example, I mean, in my case and situation, MKBHD is great as a overall tech reviewer, but there are a lot of elements that wouldn't be addressed that would be, let's say, for the GCC market or for the
Yeah.
Indian market or for the UAE market. I mean, majority of my viewership on the tech
Mm.
element of what I do is not competing with MKBHD. It might be
Mm.
people who have seen a new iPhone video, but then decide, okay, we want to see someone local. Like we don't
Of
want to see
course.
someone in America unboxing it. Like, what's the difference between the iPhone that's released in the US and the one that's released in the
Yeah.
UAE? Yes, for the most part, majority of it's the same, but there might be the small nuances. It just makes it a bit more kind of personable,
Yeah.
if you like.
Personalized and relevant.
The other thing is, I mean, once you start doing it for long enough, and once you start establishing your niche, I think the thing, I mean, coming back to that point about how I've stopped vlogging in some ways and focused on tech, one of the things in this day and age which is really important now is finding a niche. because a couple of years ago, you could be as broad as you wanted on social media
Mm.
platforms. You could experiment. It's quite common to see content creators as celebrities that would be known for multiple different things. But when you don't niche down now, you actually disadvantage yourself. So I think
Mm.
initially, if you're starting up as a content creator, I don't know, let's say an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old that wants to start off, experiment. What is it that you're into?
Mm.
Um, because you'll be doing two things. A, you'll be adding value, because if you're into something, you
Mm.
can add value into that, right? Ultimately. And number two, you can niche down. Once you're doing
Right.
those two elements, you're on your way to really standing out. Then the rest
Mm.
of it is perfection. It's just like going to the gym. It's like the practicing. When you started podcasting, your first episode is so different from this one.
Oh
Same with
man.
me. I mean,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
started making YouTube videos wearing a mask because I had no confidence whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
My first
Really?
YouTube channel was basically, yeah, my first YouTube channel was basically me wearing a mask and working on the branding and kind of like, but ultimately the reason I wore the mask was because I didn't want people to know who I was, because I was actually kind of like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have the confidence. So compare that to where I am now, and then, so I mean, those are the polished elements that will only come from doing. That's why the quantity is
Right.
quite important. So number one, just to summarize it, it's about adding value. Number two, it's about niching in, which does take a bit of time. It does take
Yeah.
a bit of time. I stopped vlogging ultimately because it wasn't so much. I mean, the vlogging situation for me was that I kind of felt like I was a jack of all trades and absolute master of none.
Uh-huh.
And the way that the vlogging scene had become here in not only the Middle East but on YouTube as a platform, there was an element of, you had to kind of do crazier things to kind of, like, it was all clickbait at one point,
Uh-huh.
and I wasn't comfortable with that. There was a level at which, I mean, I think I had my son at that point, so he started watching our videos. He's 5 now, but they're young. They still see daddy and mommy on a screen. And I think there was a moment where I was like, oh shoot, like, do I want to do things that's gonna make him in 10 to 15 years time think, oh my god, that's my dad, or do I want him to be like, yeah, he's all right, my dad's quite cool, that kind of situation.
Mm.
So that was an element of it. But then the other element was that I kept noticing it was all about niche. It's all about niche. Tech was still
Mm.
one of my biggest passions. And I just found that, when I put a tech related video up, it was just, I was getting not necessarily more views, less views, but let's say I was getting more money from that, or, more traction, or so on and so forth. So I'm glad I stuck to reviews, to technology. That might change. I mean, that's the beauty of being open to that mindset. That
Mm.
I know that maybe in 18 months I might not be into tech. Who knows? Like in 18 months, I might have a new channel, or my existing channel might convert into like reviews on watches, for example, which is something else I'm passionate about. But ultimately, the guidelines are the same: add value, stick to a niche in this day and age, and number
Right.
three, just perfect the skills that you're using,
So
be they
coming
on
to that,
YouTube. Yeah,
when you do find your niche, and when you do polish yourself with time, you get better at that. Do you think
yeah.
this really is a viable business model in terms of new kids getting onto it and then talking about it, doing it full time? You do see
I think,
outliers over
yeah,
here and there who say we have quit our
yeah,
jobs and now we're doing YouTube full time, and YouTube is
yeah.
paying us thousands and thousands of dollars a month. I don't need to go back to my job and things like that. But I consider them outliers at the end of the day. I mean, these are exceptional cases, which
I
is
think the
inspiring a lot of younger people getting into that. But is that viable enough to then focus, completely and totally on content creation and relying on that as your source of income?
Yeah, I mean, my view on this is that I think the story success stories are
Yeah,
really a small percentage, like a minute
tiny,
percentage
really
of
tiny.
what is happening. Um, I don't think, I mean, like, you can make it's an income stream. It's
Hmm.
a method. It could be a stepping stone in some cases. I mean, If you think about a young actor today, let's say a young Emirati boy who wants to get into acting, I mean, it's quite a difficult situation because I don't know of any acting colleges or schools here per se that are targeted for local
Hmm.
Emiratis. Um, so social media might be a great platform to showcase
Hmm.
those skills,
Right.
maybe make it internationally, maybe get called out somewhere else. So he's using in that case scenario that whether it's
Yeah, but he's using
Ahmed
it as
or
a means
whoever,
to an end.
he's using it as a means to an end. I think it's really difficult. I mean, in this part of the world, the thing that we have going against us as content creators is that we don't have a massive audience here.
Hmm.
So the money that you would make, let's say, of AdSense or other, advertising kind of business models that are out there would be much smaller in comparison to, let's say, the
Right.
US, the UK, Europe. However, here there are other ways. There are other methods of, like, for example, content creators. Generally, I think it depends again which field you're in, but in some cases can get paid more from brand deals than in
Hmm.
even in the
Yeah.
US, for example, substantially more. And that is more to do with the way that things are set up here. Um, so I mean, it's quite difficult. I mean, I don't do this full time. Would I do it full time? I don't know. Probably not. And that's
Hmm.
probably based now on just the way that let's say it's
And
a
how
certain
many
level
years
of
of
maturity.
experience? First of all, based on how many
Um,
years of experience do you say you would probably not do it on a full time basis?
I'd say like let's say maybe 4 years, let's say 5 years,
Hmm.
uh,
Of
experience
focused
at the
and
of
dedicated.
focused experience.
Yeah.
I mean it's even less than that, to be honest. I mean I only feel that over the last two 2.5 years I've been focused on it. um, and things have just clicked in the sense that like everything, like from a branding, from a narrative, from
Yeah.
the whole polish thing has just clicked. So even after that time, I do get offers. I mean, there are sometimes occasions where I'll be like, "Ooh, like is it a full-time job or is it this job?" But I just don't feel comfortable because
Hmm.
here in the Middle East there are just so many other factors to consider:
True.
outlying costs, education allowances,
Hmm.
you know there are costs of rent, for example. There are costs of just owning a business. In the UK it's feasible because education is free. To set up a limited company only costs you what, maybe 100 dirhams. You can do that. No, really, I mean, like, I have two limited companies in the UK, 200 dirhams, like, just to set up. Forget about the renewal.
Right.
Here, I mean, we're talking about 15,000 if it's like, free zone and this and that, no office. I
Yeah.
mean, it's an insane amount of money. So you have to kind of factor that in. You have to kind of look at that. I also, a big part of it for me is I feel like at the moment I like this side hustle because it gives me freedom. It's a release from other elements of my life. Now, if I was chasing the views and chasing the deals, um, that would just suck out entirely for me any enjoyment that I get. I enjoy what I do because it's not work. You know,
Hmm.
and that's something that's happened for me. Also, I've had experiences with platforms. I mean, YouTube flags a video,
Hmm.
or YouTube might flag your channel, let's say, for something, and you just realize very quickly it's very dependent on somebody else or somebody
Right.
else's platform. So there are all these facets, there are all these elements that maybe are unique to me, but might not be to somebody else. For somebody
Hmm.
else, they might be like, dude, this is easy. I make this easy. I'm happy with this. I'll go
Yeah.
ahead with this. I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's getting more and more harder now to
Uh-huh.
be a full-time, let's say, influencer or content creator. It's certainly got more harder now because there are less avenues of actually making money.
Hmm.
YouTube is the only platform that will pay you directly through ad revenue, AdSense.
Yeah,
Again,
I'm
that can
surprised there are no
depend on,
competitors in any form. I mean,
yeah.
whether it is
We've been
branding
hearing
deals
this.
or something like that.
we've been hearing this about Instagram for a while, that they might be monetizing IGTV videos soon. I've been hearing that for the last 3 years, and the whole model of Facebook, which is also reflective on Instagram now, it's, you basically have to pay to play scenario situations. So YouTube doesn't do that. There are certain other elements that will allow organic reach to still get ahead.
Mm.
Facebook and Instagram doesn't do that. TikTok, there are rumors about TikTok opening it up to monetization as well. So some of the big TikTokers might get money that
TikTok
way.
is really,
But at the
really coming up, man. I mean, it's really
TikTok is one
disrupting
of
this
the
whole area. I mean, remember
yeah
the time of the 15-second vines, I think?
yeah
Yeah. And then now suddenly TikTok, the way it is actually gaining audiences. It's crazy.
TikTok.
You
I
know?
mean, I started experimenting with my tech related stuff on TikTok, and I did it
Uh-huh.
because it was like so different. And very quickly, I mean, like my views. I mean, there are some videos on TikTok, like quick unboxings, 15-second
Right,
unboxing, 30-second unboxings, that have
right.
got way more views. I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of views, whereas my YouTube video has
Hmm.
got like, let's say, 15 or 20,000 views.
Hmm.
There was one video I put up which is like close to 1 million views on TikTok,
Oh, wow.
and
How many
insane
followers you got
engagement. It's
there?
not. I recently hit, I think, 30,000 followers on TikTok, and that's like
Whoa.
with minimal kind of. It's just like posting up every now and again. So as a platform, I mean, yeah, and this is the thing about social media, it's this constant change, which a normal
Yeah.
9 to 5, you can, as you age, you kind of mature when in terms of experience and other stuff. With social media, experience is really based on being agile and
Hmm.
being willing and prepared to try different platforms, and making, understanding the nuances of each of those platforms. Because what I post on YouTube, I can't post on IG, and I can't post the IG stuff on TikTok.
True.
It's all kind of like you have to give it all its own attention. Yeah,
Yeah, which makes me think earlier I used to be an absolute I used to hate the vertical video format. But then I
yeah,
think now it's you have more platforms on vertical format than on the landscape one, because practically speaking, there's only YouTube there. And
exactly. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
the fact, but then you need you have to create content twice, or maybe somehow try to salvage
three
a
times.
landscape video into a portrait mode. It's a bit difficult. I mean, with that much of a narrow window. But the way portrait video is now coming up is crazy. It's everywhere now. You look at Facebook, you look at Instagram, IGTV, TikTok, even Twitter. You know, it's completely different new way, and a new requirement for content creators to stay up to date with that. So how
Exactly.
do you shoot your videos? Do you do it twice, or do you just in Premiere just go and compress it?
I produce separate content, so I mean, in my
So that's
situation,
double time.
I have it's a double time. But what happens is the narrative is different as well, because
Hmm.
you can't. I mean, like, so my bread and butter from a content perspective is YouTube,
Hmm.
and that will always be like the priority. So that takes the majority of the time in terms of filming, in terms of editing, whatever it might be, YouTube. But then there might be teaser videos, let's say, or follow-up videos, which might be open Q&As and so forth on IG, that
Hmm.
I might use and then put on Snapchat. I don't really use Snapchat that much now, but
Hmm.
I mean, I sometimes I do that. Sometimes the same IG videos will then get uploaded to, YouTube has YouTube stories as well.
Yeah.
So I put that up on YouTube stories. And then I used to do that with TikTok, but now I'm giving separate time to TikTok essentially, because
Hmm.
the quality now, I've got to a level where I'm understanding the nuances of the video quality there. So it requires its separate, effort there. Choosing the right music, for example, making sure everything is lined up, like the young
Yeah.
kids do in terms of whatever dance or whatever. Not that I do dance on my TikTok, but just those elements. So I don't know, it's just part and parcel of it. I mean, there's no kind of copy cut paste, and I think people will know very quickly. Also, platforms don't like it when you do that as well.
Yeah.
So if you post stuff from IG to TikTok, I don't know how accurate this is, but I have read that sometimes that content can be quashed in a way so that people aren't seeing it,
Right.
so there are different elements like this, but you have to put in the work. I mean, sometimes I don't do all that for just a every video. Sometimes I might do that for a big product. If I get early hands on with an iPhone or an Android, like a Huawei device that's new to the region, that's been given exclusive to me first or whatever, then I might do something like that. It's depending on what the quality is. Yeah.
Mm. Right. All right. So from juggling between family, between your work, between content creation, managing time and all, do you consider yourself to be obsessed about time management? I like to put everything on my calendar. It has to be there. So
Yeah.
I know what time I'm doing my podcast, what time I'm doing my own personal other content creation, and also what time am I busy with family. Everything has to be there on the calendar. I'm kind of obsessed that way. So do you just do like, a snap of a finger? Okay, now this is more important. Let me move to that. We'll look at this problem when we're done with the other stuff. Or do you like to plan your stuff, your day or week for that matter?
I used to be super obsessed with GTDs, getting things done. So I used to use the Covey system, you
Hmm.
know, urgent, there used to be that quadrant that you would, and I used to do that at the beginning of the week, on the weekend, on a Saturday, I would put things in this quadrant to try and figure out where they were. Um, and I would use different apps, like there were Things, for example. It's an app called Things that you can get on Mac OS, iPhone, and that was really sort of breaking every project down to a bigger
Right.
project, to a bigger what your life goals were. I was one of those kind of guys. I mean, you learn to kind of adapt and change. Now, I do put a lot of things down. I'm
Hmm.
really, I'm not great at getting things done. Like I tend to just now do things when they're necessary. In most cases, like, oh, I've got to film this. Cool. I need an hour of just undisturbed time. Boom, 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 done.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the most efficient way of doing it, but sometimes with kids and with you just have a window of an hour, just
Hmm.
get it done, that kind of thing. And for that, I mean, I do try and put a lot of stuff down in my calendar app on my phone. I think now with dictation and stuff, it can be as easy as just
Yeah.
Siri, to remind me to do XYZ. Boom, done. And I think those are some of the tools that I've noticed a lot of people don't seem to use as much as I do. I mean, there are times when I can be in the car and I remember something, and it literally is, if you have your Apple Watch or you have your phone
Yeah.
or you can have something, whether it's Google or whether it's Siri, you can just say, do this.
Yeah.
And it's a great way of just just remembering to do things. I think you have to be strict with time. You have to be strict with all facets of your time,
Hmm.
um, even the downtime that you might have, when you're searching on Twitter or whatever. I feel sometimes I need to improve on that element, because sometimes I use that as an excuse for research. Like, oh, I'm on TikTok because I'm trying to understand it better, but I don't need to watch like 50 videos of people dancing. Like, I could suss out the basics of what the trends are from 3 or 4
Yeah.
videos. Um, but I think time management is essential. Like, if you really want to grow as an individual,
Hmm.
um, time management is so important. It's one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with watches. Like, it's a really weird thing, because like you can see, especially if you've got a clock, where the hand ticks or
Yeah.
sweeps or whatever, like you can see it, just that's gone, that's gone,
Yeah.
that's gone, that minute, that
Yeah.
second is gone. It's quite a And the older you get, the more you have, life experiences, kids, whatever. Suddenly, all that stuff starts mattering more.
Hmm.
I love how tech companies at the moment have. It's kind of died down. I felt like it might have been a big push, but if you look at your phones now, if you're running Android or iOS, you have this screen time feature now.
True. Yeah.
Um, a lot of people don't have that activated, but it's worth activating because the numbers don't lie. Like, you'll see how much time you're
Yeah.
spending on what app.
Hmm.
I mean, like, my average phone use, but I do use my phone a lot for like work and social media. It's about 8 hours plus a day. That's a
Mm.
lot of screen time, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
But you using it
and for
productively for
me,
your work a lot. Most of the people use it for, just it's just a wasted time
yeah,
actually that you could
I mean, like
avoid.
that's the thing. Like,
Procrastination mainly.
I mean, in my situation, I kind of forgive myself. Even 8 hours is still too much for what I do
Mm.
when I'm critical about it. But I can kind of forgive myself. Well, that 8 hours is productive, and I'm, making X, Y, Z, the ROI or whatever. I can
Mm.
actually have an idea of that. But my God, if I if I was like, if I was not creating the content, I think actually, to be honest, now where I am in the headspace is that if I came off social media completely, I
Mm.
think I would. I, honestly, I don't think I would have the phone that I have. I don't think I would have a smartphone. I would actually go back to a Nokia phone
That's
because, like,
interesting.
I mean, it's really weird because, like, I've been wanting to do this for a while. This idea of like going back to using a dumb phone, as they call it. The old school Nokias, the
Yeah.
batteries that would last, through a
Yeah.
nuclear holocaust or something like that. Because ultimately, I think it's also sometimes it can be a stage where when I started off tech reviewing, you get a new phone and it was like the biggest deal. Like
Yeah.
you would just baby that thing. You'd be up all hours at night trying to set it up, changing the wallpaper, changing an app from
True. True.
this,
We've all been through that.
and we've all been through that, right? And
Yeah.
some of us still do that once every 2 years when we get a new device. But I think the more I've been engaged with with the technology, the less. I mean, there are times now where I really just I want to just leave everything. So there on certain days of the week, it's not consistent, but there have been times where I've just gone AWOL for like 3 days, and people have been like, "Oh,
Mm.
are you okay? What happened?" And it's so amazing to do that.
It's refreshing
Um,
actually.
it's refreshing,
Yeah.
and I think it's important as well. It's necessary as well. Yeah,
Mm. And I think another partly to add to that is also because the marginal changes in technology in terms of a new phone coming up isn't as big as it used to be. So I mean,
exactly.
I'm losing interest in changing phones. I used to change phones every year, but now I haven't changed my phone for more than 2 years, and I don't intend to change it this year as well. It's not because I think mainly because I don't see anything so great that I want to jump up. you know
Yeah, I
so
think we've
I think
reached the plateau. Yeah,
yeah, it is a plateau moment for the industry, I think, as a whole.
yeah, and this is the reason why we're seeing a lot of manufacturers really clinging on to like really weird stuff. I mean, like the folding smartphones, I think was the point at which I remember in 2019.
Hmm.
I think folding phones was the first time in a long time where I saw a lot of people excited just
I got
because it was
really
like,
interested
wow,
in
it's a
that phone,
different
but
phone.
then
Yeah,
suddenly, I mean, everything went bust. I don't know. What do you
yeah.
think about the Fold 2 that's coming up? 5th August, I think.
Let's see what happens with that. I mean, the specs and the leaks that we've seen so far are interesting.
Hmm.
I mean, look, I have the Samsung Galaxy Fold, the original one. I think it's actually quite an interesting phone. Reminds
Hmm.
me a lot of the old, since we're on that subject, the old Nokia communicators. The one where
Communicator,
you
yeah.
open up and.
Hmm.
So, so I mean, there is that element of it, and it is interesting because you can go from this kind of smartphone to tablet in an instant. You know, so it's an interesting device,
Hmm.
but I don't think. I mean, I think the technology. You have to rate Samsung for what they've done. I think Samsung have done a good job at pushing the boat out here, and they took a massive risk. Big
Yeah.
risk. They took a massive risk, and I hope it pays off for them in some way down the line.
Hmm.
It's an interesting phone. It's a different phone. Even now, when sometimes occasionally I use it when I'm out and about, I will have people that really sort of, excuse me, is that a folding phone? Is that the folding phone?
Hmm.
So it still gets that attention as well. Yeah,
Yeah. So things like that, they really catch your attention. They're really something to look forward to. But other than that,
yeah,
it's just the same slab. You
yeah,
reduce the screen to body ratio a little bit. You get a bigger screen. Rest all pretty much the
yeah.
same. as long as software updates go, as long as you support it, for at least 2 to 3 years, then software experience wise, you're pretty much the same as the new phones. Some
Exactly.
elements of hardware are a bit different, in screen fingerprint, pop-up cameras, things like that. But overall, I don't feel
Yeah.
that big of a kind of an attention grabber for me to at least think about changing phones.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point, actually, because I'm sure as tech content creators, you guys feel that, in terms of your audiences, because then you have to somehow point that out, yet make your content interesting enough for the new phone. Isn't that a challenge?
It's a challenge. I mean, like every year, it's a challenge
If
when
I were to ask you, Mkwan, I'm right now using a Note 9, and we've had the Note 10, and then now Note 20 is coming. I did not upgrade to Note 10, and I do not intend to upgrade to Note 20 by the leaks and by what we've seen till now.
yeah.
But when Note 10 came out, if I were to ask you, hey, I have Note 9, should I upgrade to Note 10 or not? You know, so what would your advice be, and how would you either convince or not convince? If you remember, there was a recent video by Unbox Therapy about the iPhone, SE, I think.
SE. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5 reasons why you should buy it, then 5 reasons why you should not buy it. Both the scenarios. So, what do you do in those
Yeah.
scenarios as a content creator?
I think there's, I think in those scenarios, I mean, it's different, slightly different for different content creators. But for me, I mean, like I will, I think those people that follow me and been following me for a while will know that there's talking about what we know, like the specs, performance, but there's also an element of my time with it, my experiences. So I
Mm,
try and incorporate that. I mean, it's, some would say it's slightly biased, but people want to know other people's opinions. If they
mm,
don't want to know people's opinions, then I don't know why they're watching YouTube videos, because a lot of what you want to know, if you want unbiased stuff, simply read the specs.
right.
But let's say an Android smartphone, I have an Android smartphone sitting over here. Spec wise, it has much better RAM than the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which is also sitting
Mm,
here. But does it perform as well as that? Hell no. This has like much less RAM than that one,
right.
but its performance in the real world is different. So I think as tech content creators, I think in my view, audiences are also interested in real life experiences. So that's what I
Mm,
try and do. My business model allows me not to be tied into, you know, oh yeah, today it's this company who are paying X amount. So wow, because I don't have to do that. In fact, one of the criticisms that gets levied to me is, Emkwan, you never talk about stuff that you don't like. And I say to them, well, I don't talk about it because it's two reasons. Number one, if it's not good enough for the most part, it's never on my channel because it's not worth the time. Why am I going to make a video on a product that is rubbish? Normally, like people have asked me, oh, I'm Con, I went into your YouTube channel. I didn't find a video on X product or Y product. And I said, well, the reason why you didn't find it is because I didn't enjoy it. So I'm
mm,
not going to give it that airtime. I have done one or two videos, and interestingly enough, they're the ones that perform really well, like why I hate this device or whatever. But that's another thing. And also here in this part of the world, we have to be sensitive as well because brands can. There's a difference that, let's say, Lou from Unbox Therapy can do in the
mm,
US that we can't necessarily do here. So there are other considerations. But I mean, when I try and present information about a new device, it's always talking about the whole experience. So it can be the specs, it can be the things that I like, the things that I don't like, but more importantly, the experiences while using that device. Um, and you're right. I mean, the situation, it's tough for us at the moment because it doesn't matter if it's iPhone or if
mm,
it's an Android flagship device. Most of those devices, if I make a video about them, I'm always going to get a comment where someone says, "Oh, but I have the previous model, and I don't see a big difference from this," and they're right. I mean, if you were to approach me on a personal level and say, I'm quite, I'm thinking about such and such device, and I have that time to spend with you and ask you questions, my biggest, uh, the most important questions are, what do you need said device for?
yeah.
And what is your budget? Those
Mm,
are really the two key points. And I always ask them in that order, not what your budget is and what you need. Because if you tell me that you need X, Y, Z, well, I can tell you, look, dude, This is, you can get this within your budget. Now, if you want to pay
Mm.
more, that's your choice. When it comes to smartphones, I've said this, and I know a few other content creators have said this as well. The most exciting category, if you want to call it that, is now not in the flagship. It's actually in the mid-range
Yeah.
smartphones. It's the smartphones that are, that are able to pack, a quad camera,
Mm.
6 gigabytes of RAM, in fingerprint scanner, like this product over here, the
Right.
Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Lite, for like, how much is this? 1,100 dirhams.
And you're getting so
You
much
know,
into it.
and you're getting that, right? You're getting that. I mean, is the camera? It's got a quad camera with 48 megapixel main sensor. Is it as good as the iPhone 11 Pro Max? No, but
But then look
for
how much
most
you're paying for
people,
iPhone 11 Pro Max.
yeah. But I mean, it's interesting because the mid-range smartphone is where the juicy stuff is happening. It's where the manufacturers are really kind of like trying to squeeze in as
Yeah.
much as they can. That's actually the sector where the specs are much higher now,
Right.
because what they're doing is they're offering more bang per buck
Mm.
than in the flagship devices. I mean, the flagship devices, there are some amazing flagship devices, but are they worth the price of a laptop? I
True.
mean, like, 7,000 dirhams fully spec. Who would pay that for a flagship device?
Yeah.
You know,
Makes a lot of
I mean,
sense.
so there's an interesting thing. I mean, in the past on my tech YouTube channel, I would never touch mid-range smartphones because I was always into flagship, and that was the demographics of my viewership tend to be people with disposable income, English speakers. But now, I mean, some of my most viewed videos are the videos where I'm talking about mid-range smartphones. I've got a massive audience from India now, massive audience from Pakistan, massive audience um, from other countries, the Philippines, that are
Mhm.
middle class, let's say. And these are the devices that people are talking about in their circles because they're kind of
Right.
almost bored of. What I've also noticed is that it's a really weird conversation people are having now, where in certain markets they want to show off what they can get for as little as possible.
Hmm.
So, like,
Right.
I mean, there is a market for, he's got another iPhone or he's got the latest Samsung, whatever. But there is also, I think, a market for people who want to be like, look, dude, you got an iPhone. I've got a camera with, I've got a smartphone with 4 cameras, and I
Hmm.
paid 1/5 of what you paid. It's one of those sort of situations as well. Um, so it's a really interesting kind of dynamic. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm more excited about mid range and reviewing those kind of
Hmm.
technologies than I am the flagships now. So yeah,
That's great. Well, Amcon, it's been a great having you on the show,
thank
and
you.
we'd love to continue talking. I don't know how much time you
Yeah,
have left for me, but I don't want to hold you beyond your schedule. I know you've got a tight schedule. And while we end the episode today, a couple of things that I want to say to my listeners, and maybe you can add to your perspective, is that you've gone through a lot of phases, and we see a lot of people and a lot of people, a lot of guests that are on my show speak the same similar things of the lessons that they've learned while they've gone through different phases of life and they've struggled hard to achieve their dreams. And the idea of the podcast is also to tell you and show you that if these people can do it, so can you. But you got to be ready to go through the drill, and
yeah,
nothing comes easy. But on the other side, I always say nothing which is worth having should come easy as well. you know
that's true.
it's worth that value because there is a process to achieve it. We've got to go through that process, right? So
Yeah.
as Mkwan, before we wind up, one last message if you want to give to our listeners on what they should think about. It's not specifically about the tech sector, it's not about YouTube, it's not about content creators. Generally in life, if you want to, if you're
Mhm.
looking at, if you have an aspiration, you how do you go through that process, and how do you keep yourself motivated to make sure that you come as a winner on the other side?
Yeah. I think that the overriding experience, the overriding message, the overriding vibe that I keep coming into contact with. And this is in my social media, this is in my professional, this is in my, my personal, my family, everything. I've noticed one of the key points, standout points, is that you have to enjoy the process in
Hmm.
whatever it is, because it's
Very well
so
put.
like the age that we live in now on social media, everything, you see everything, so you assume that, oh, it's been easy for that person, and also that you see something assuming that, oh, God has given them that, but you don't know what
Hmm.
he's taken away from them,
Right.
you don't know. It's very easy in the modern age, particularly for young people, but also I'm noticing for people with age as well. Like sometimes my parents might make a comment and I'll be like, I don't expect that sounds like a young person on social media today, but I think this is what social media does to us
Hmm.
as a collective, and that's a completely different podcast. I'd love to explore that later on. Is that one of the things it does is that it makes you forget the process, the joy that comes from the journey, not necessarily the destination,
Hmm.
you know, and I think that's really important. A lot of successful people that I've spoken to, a lot of successful, individuals, and also when I think back to my successes as well, a lot of that has been down through the process of learning to enjoy the journey as opposed to trying to get, to a number or get to a stage of where you view as being successful. Because
Hmm.
what happens is that you're more likely to grow, you're more likely to be patient, you're more likely to be able to absorb all the lessons that you need to absorb to give you that long term longevity when it comes to, being successful in that field, but also in multiple other fields as well. So learn to enjoy the journey. It's weird because when you the journey from 0 to 100,000 subscribers, I think is actually more enjoyable than post 100,000 subscribers.
Hmm.
Like it's amazing. I in some weird way, I kind of wish that I was more in the moment back when I had less subscribers than I am now. And it's the same with the health, for example. Same with when you sit down for food. Same for, I mean, just think about what COVID has taught us. Like you're a fool if you take anything for granted ever again. Going for coffee
Right.
with my wife and my kids would feel like an amazing experience. Now, I hope that when they allow, under 12s to go back to the malls, none of us are going to be using our phones. I probably won't
Hmm.
even take my phone out that day. I want to sit down and, do the proper like Pakistani style slurping of the coffee or whatever, just to be in that moment, because
Hmm.
there's so much that comes from being present in the moment, I think. Yeah.
Right. Great, Emkwan. Thanks a lot for being on the show. We'll
Thank you
have
very much, man.
Emkwan's
Thank you for
links
having me.
in the show notes. Of course, everybody knows him in the region. You can of course follow him at Emkwan. Would you want to spell out your handles for everybody so that they
Yeah,
can
you
follow you?
can just Google Emkwan, Emkwan, and that should bring
You'll
up
find him everywhere.
yeah. Well, most places, let's face it. Thank you very
Right,
much, man.
right, right. And you can follow me on Farukh Talks. It's FARRUKHTALKS. And I have the same handles on all social media channels as well as on Facebook. On LinkedIn, you can look me up as Farooq Ahmed. And well, of course, if you like the content, share it across in your network. We'd love a review on iTunes or other platforms wherever you're listening to this podcast. And we hope that you like the content, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.